Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of AB in the Films. Let's talk about Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, yeah.
I've been watching this movie since the age of 6 in 1999. I've had this tape that long. This is one of the best films from John Hughes, you guys. I've always wanted to talk about John Hughes on this show. But then again, you know what? I've reviewed John Hughes' films on this show before. I've talked about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I've talked about the Home Alone movies. All of them, actually. Even the ones he had nothing to do with. But, you know, I haven't really talked about the other ones, like The Breakfast Club, or Pretty in Pink, or Some Kind of Wonderful, or Weird Science, or even the vacation movies, Mr. Mom. The list goes on. And I thought about, if there was ever a John Hughes movie that I would want to talk about, which one would it be? And I believe it would have to be Ferris Bueller, because honestly, this was the first John Hughes movie I ever saw, you guys. I saw this before I even saw Home Alone. I didn't see Home Alone until I was like 7 or 8 years old at the time, when I was young. But this was, like 1999 at least, because I remember watching this when I was 6, you know, so this was really the first John Hughes movie I ever saw. And I just watched it a couple of weeks ago. It's still one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And you know what's interesting? I've seen documentaries on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I've heard John Hughes talk about it in interviews before he passed away. And you know, what's really interesting about this movie is he had just come off doing The Breakfast Club right before this one. And this, now, the Breakfast Club, guarantee, it does have a lot of funny moments in it. But The Breakfast Club isn't really looked upon as a comedy, it's more of a drama, because, yeah, we get to meet all these kids that, you know, have a detention class together, and you're watching it, and you think, oh, this is going to be somewhat of a comedy, because these are all the, you know, different cliques in high school. But then, you know, once the principal leaves, they start talking, and they have that big scene where they sit around, and they all talk about why they're in detention. That's a real heavy scene, and that scene goes on, that's like a 15-20 minute scene. I mean, it's a really powerful scene, actually. It's one of the highlights of the film. So I think what John Hughes was trying to do was he was trying to do another serious kind of film, but with comedic elements, because the original cut for Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a lot longer than the theatrical cut that we all know, and when they were putting it together, a lot of storylines and scenes were cut, and it pretty much came down to that this wasn't supposed to be a drama, it turned out to be more of a comedy. They started keeping a lot of the more comedic scenes in and losing a lot of the drama stuff. Now, there is drama in the movie, like everything that's happening with Alan Ruck's character, Cameron, that's pretty heavy, and that's at the end of the movie with the car and all that, we all know that scene. But there's actually, and even with Jennifer Grey's character, Jeannie, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening with her, too. Her relationship with her brother. But what's so funny about this movie, everybody quotes this movie. I see people walking on the boardwalk anywhere that have t-shirts that say, "Save Ferris." I mean, I laugh so hard every time I see those. And it's just, you know, perfect casting in this movie, great writing, great characters. I mean, this is the movie that made Matthew Broderick a household name, I think. I mean, like, he had done a couple of movies before Ferris Bueller, but nobody really knew who he was, really, I think. This is the one, like, again, this is the one movie that everybody recognizes him from, really. And he's done other movies, too. Some of them good and some of them not so good, but this is the one film everyone knows him from. This is the character that he played that everybody knows him from. And this was my introduction to Matthew Broderick, actually, and I loved it, and I still think it's a funny movie. And you know what, there's a lot of, but, you know, aside from all the comedy that's in this movie, we all have to agree, even if you've never seen Ferris Bueller, by the way, if you've never seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you have to watch this movie. You have got to watch this. You are going to laugh so hard if you have never seen this movie before. The funniest bit in this film, and trust me, there's a lot of funny bits in this film, but we all agree, I think, the stuff between Ed Rooney, the principal, and his secretary, Grace, that is some of the funny... I wish there were more scenes with the two of them going back and forth in the office at the school. And trust me, there's quite a few scenes like that. But once he leaves the school to go get Ferris, I mean, that's pretty much the end of those scenes. But in the first half of the movie, when they're in the office and they have those scenes going back and forth, and when Cameron calls them on the phone, like that, it just goes back and forth. It's so... It's 10 times funnier now that I'm an adult. Because when I was a kid, I didn't get a lot of the jokes, because a lot of this stuff went over my head. But I laugh so hard to this movie now, especially now that I'm an adult. It's still... And it brings back a lot of memories, too, because I used to watch this movie. You know, it's interesting. When Siskel and Ebert reviewed Home Alone, they referred to Macaulay Culkin's character as a preteen Ferris Bueller. And it's interesting. When you watch Ferris Bueller, and when I watch it now, having seen Home Alone and grown up with Home Alone... Yeah, look at the stuff that Ferris does in his bedroom when his mother's about to walk in on him and see if he's in his bed. Look at all the ropes and everything and the tricks that he had. Like, look, yeah, like it does kind of remind me of Home Alone a little bit. I hadn't picked up on that before. But, this movie was done really well. And you know, there's something else I didn't know about this movie. Because I was always wondering, because you know, when you watch this film and you look in the background, there's a couple of things that might not make sense. But I want to share this with you guys right now, because I don't think this has been talked about, really, except in this documentary that I saw about the making of Ferris Bueller. In the original script, and even in the movie, but all these scenes were cut, because they had to, because the movie was too long, so they had to lose stuff. And once they started losing scenes, they have to delete the storyline out of the movie, because otherwise the movie's not going to make any sense. But there was a storyline in this movie that the Buellers didn't have Ferris and Jeannie. It wasn't just 2 siblings. It was 4 kids. They had 4 kids. Ferris was one of 4 kids. Now, we don't know that. We only see him and his sister. Well, in the movie, and there are some pictures of this, there's a scene, I guess it's a scene, or maybe it's a rehearsal, but I've seen pictures of this, where they're sitting around the family table, and you see a little boy and a little girl. These are 2 other siblings that Ferris has. And that explains why on the refrigerator, when Rooney breaks into the house, that's why there's drawings on the refrigerator. Because I remember wondering that. I'm like, both their kids are teenagers. Why do they have drawings on the refrigerator? Well, that's why. Because the scenes were already shot, and they needed the scene with Ed Rooney when he breaks into the house, but they just didn't take the drawings down or reshoot it, because by the time post-production came around, they were taking those scenes out with the other siblings. So, yeah, that explains that. I never knew that. That's a little interesting thing that I found out about this movie. But, and also, here's another thing that's great about this movie. I saw this movie, and I grew up with this movie before I became a Beatles fan. Okay, I didn't know who the Beatles were in 1999, 2000. I wouldn't become a Beatles fan until I was like 9 or 10, so a couple of years down the road. But, you know, this was the first time I ever heard Twist and Shout in a movie. And it's interesting, you know, I went on a, I actually went to a convention about 5 years ago. I went to this place called IAPA. It's for anyone in the amusement industry knows what that is. But I went to IAPA about 5 years ago. It's a convention for rides and attractions and stuff like that for amusement parks around the world. And me and a couple of the guys from Wonderland Pier, actually, we went to a bar. We went to a couple of bars that night, but we went to this bar, and there was a cover band there, and they were doing Beatles songs, and one of the songs they did was Twist and Shout. And the general manager at the time pulled me in, and he goes, "Hey, Andrew, when you hear this song, what's the first thing that comes to mind? The Beatles or Ferris Bueller?" And I just lost it. I laughed so hard. I was like, that's a tough one. I don't know. That's hard. That's really hard for me. But I guess I would have to say Ferris Bueller, because this is how I was introduced to that song. It wasn't how I was introduced to the Beatles, really. That would come a couple of years later. But that song, every time I hear that song, I think of this movie. I think of that scene. And that's another scene. Again, that scene comes right out of nowhere. It has nothing to do with the plot. But it's an upbeat and it's a joyful scene. You don't care. You don't care if it has nothing to do with the plot. It's so well done and it's entertaining. And all these people come out of nowhere and they have like a musical dance to it. Like, it's like they rehearsed this. Like that makes me laugh. And his father's up in the building and he hears the parade and you think, oh, is Ferris gonna get caught? But no, he's twisted and moving. It's just so funny. This movie has one funny scene after another. Like, you can tell why so many people love this movie. This isn't only one of the best films of the 80s or John Hughes' career. This is one of the best films, period. I mean, it's so... I've gone on and on about this movie. And whether you've seen this movie or you haven't, you all... I think pretty much all of us have seen this movie. But if you have not seen this movie... do yourself a favor and watch it. You will not be disappointed. You will laugh so hard. You will watch this movie many more times after the first viewing. Trust me, I have. I've been watching this film for 21 years. I still have it on video. And this film... oh, when he's on... when the principal's on the phone and he... and Ferris is absent... his absence has changed because Ferris hacked into the computer and he's changing it. And he's like, Grace... Grace! That just keeps going on and on. And everything that his girlfriend Sloane and his friend Cameron and when Cameron's on the phone and he's talking to Rooney and he's pretending to be Sloane's father on the phone, and at first Rooney thinks it's Ferris, but it's not. But he doesn't know it's Cameron. But he's like, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to offend you like that. You have no idea how embarrassed I am. And they're just. It's, I can't, you all know this movie, you guys. It's just, I've gone on and on about the comedic scenes in this film, but the drama in this, especially at the end with Cameron, because this has been something that's been going on throughout the whole movie. Cameron's terrified of his father. He's not allowed to do anything in the movie. He's not allowed to be himself. And finally, he just explodes at the end of the movie with the car. And, like, you know, kudos to Alan Ruck. I mean, I don't know, like, did he ever do any other movies after this film? I mean, I've seen him in some appearances that he's done on TV and stuff like that, but every time I see Alan Ruck, the first thing I think of is Cameron Fry. I mean, that's the character I think of when I see him. But did he ever do any other movies after this? I mean, he was a pretty good actor in this movie. I thought he was really well, he did a good job in this film. But, the end of the movie with the car, yeah, that was heavy. That was heavy stuff. And the music choices that they make with this, like everyone knows the music in this movie. When he's running home to beat his mom and his sister to get back in bed before they get back to the house, and they play that, dun 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 dun, how, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that song. Everyone knows that. And of course the end credit scene when Rooney gets back on the bus. That's another thing. I don't think, movies have been doing this for a couple of decades now, where they show, I'm not talking about outtakes during the end credits, I'm talking about scenes during the end credits, or after credit scenes. I know the Marvel movies do this all the time, but I think up until Ferris Bueller's Day Off, nobody had ever really done that. Nobody ever played a scene after the credits or during the credits. I don't think that was done until Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If it happened before, please name the movie, because I can't think of one film that did that up until Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And not only that, it's a funny scene too, when Rudy gets on the school bus and everyone's looking at him like, what the heck happened to you? Because him with the dog, and the dog chasing him, oh my gosh. That, I could literally go on about this movie for hours. Hours. Okay, that's how well done this flick is. And this movie, just talking about it makes me want to turn on the VCR and pop that tape in. But, yeah, I love this movie. This was my introduction to John Hughes. I want to say something about John Hughes for a minute here. I haven't seen all of John Hughes' films. Like, I've never seen Weird Science. I've never seen European Vacation is the one I haven't seen. I heard that one is I really haven't seen Pretty in Pink. I've seen bits of it. I haven't seen She's Having a Baby. So those are the ones I haven't seen. But the ones I have seen, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Home Alone, 1 and 2, and 3. And National Lampoon's Vacation, Mr. Mom, 16 Candles, Some Kind of Wonderful. I mean, all those films, like, okay, he didn't direct all of them, but he wrote them. And these are some of the best films of the 80s. And you know what? For a good reason, because really well done characters, good stories. you know, an interesting take on certain issues. And I really, I admire that. I admire what John Hughes was doing in these films, and he was just a really talented writer. He's more of a writer in my book than he is a director. Now, to bear in mind, great director, but like I think people forget, he did not direct Some Kind of Wonderful. He did not direct Pretty in Pink. You know, he did not direct Vacation. He didn't, but he wrote them. And they're still credited as being John Hughes films. So, in my book, I think he's more of a talented writer than he is a director. And don't get me wrong, great director, but I think he's more of a writer. Kind of like Tarantino. Now, Tarantino has written and directed most of his films. There's been a couple of movies Tarantino has written that he hasn't directed. But, like, well, think about this. The movie Natural Born Killers. Everyone hears that title and they automatically think Tarantino, but he didn't direct it. He wrote it. You know what I'm saying? That's where I see John Hughes in this category when it comes to that. Now, maybe not the subject matter, but when it comes to writing and directing. And I've always been a fan of John Hughes' filmography, and I love this one, especially this one, Ferris Bueller. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I love this movie. If you guys haven't seen this, go buy it. You know what? Just buy it. Buy it on DVD. Buy it on Blu-ray. I have it on video, so I'm good. But yeah, just get it, because you're gonna be watching it more than once. You're gonna love it. So those are my thoughts on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and I will see you guys in the next review. Take care.